Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. And I have an amazing guest this week. And I have Whitney here with me. And Whitney is going to tell us all about her relationship with her gorgeous cat, Ollie. Whitney, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's go back to the beginning. How did you find Ollie? How did you meet Ollie?
Oh, yeah, thank you. He is is always going to be
Hmm.
just such a special cat in our family, special pet in our life. Um, we got him when he was a kitten, just a few weeks old, and he was at a shelter. My daughter was like, "Our other cat needs a companion," and I don't know, she convinced us somehow, and so she picked up this most curious, snuggly cat there. There was actually other people waiting in line going, "No, I wanted that one."
Oh,
And we got him. And
lucky.
he yeah.
Yeah.
And it did not turn out to be a companion for our other cat who never really warmed up to him and was not interested in this kitten coming into her life and bothering her all the time and chasing her around. But he really became my special buddy. And I just he just, he followed us around. He followed me around a lot. He was great with my kids and my husband too, but especially as my kids got older and eventually, just certainly these last few years, as he was a senior cat, he was my special buddy.
Hmm.
He thought he was a dog. He would come when he was called. He would wait at the door when we got home. He would go out for walks on a leash. He traveled in the car with us. He begged for table scraps. Like, I mean, he loved belly rubs, like all the like sort of cat things cats don't do. He did. He did them just like a dog. So we had just so many funny stories about him, and he's just a really big personality, and um, he knew, like, he wasn't a lap cat, but he knew that when I was upset, he would kind of come around, right? And he
Hmm.
would climb in between my legs in the morning and just like park out there, stretch himself out. Like a snake, and I'd rub his belly while I drank my coffee in the morning, and then I couldn't leave. I'd just be stuck in bed for as long as he wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
he just was such a love bug, and that really, you know, bonded me with him for sure.
I can imagine. So has he like had he any like particular quirks or unique personality? Obviously, he used to be a dog in a previous life or
I
something, but
know.
like other than the dog-like quirks, um, he obviously came with you to a lot of places, went on a lot of adventures. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so he definitely, like, we used to, when the cats were younger, we
Hmm.
would let them just kind of roam about in the backyard or in the front yard even, he would like to, and we could just shake the kibble and they would come back in. Um,
Hmm.
and our he was always great about that because he was super food obsessed. So that was kind of his biggest personality quirk, was just being totally food obsessed. So anytime you were eating or cooking anything, he was right there.
Hmm.
And anytime that he could get food, he wanted it. So he would always come back, and then and so we just kind of considered him like an indoor outdoor cat, but he was mostly indoors. He would always be in at night, of course, and he was in most of the time. It was just
Yeah.
he had that option. And he one time when we were on vacation, we had a house sitter, and she didn't do anything wrong. Somehow he fell out of a screen in the second floor window in the middle of the night. And we always kind of joked that Pixie pushed him because
Oh,
she didn't like him, the other cat, Pixie.
there
So
was a rivalry there.
yeah, for sure. And he was gone and missing. And so she went shaking the kibble around. He didn't come, and
Oh
she
God.
texted me, and I was like, "Oh, something's wrong." Like, he would have come. If he
Yeah.
was in the house, he would have come. Like, he's trapped somewhere or he's out. And she looked and said, "Oh my God, the window has a crack in it." And maybe he fell out of the screen. And so
Hmm.
anyway, he's gone. We came home early. We plastered the neighborhood with flyers. We walked up and down shaking kibble, and he just was nowhere. And then suddenly a neighbor called and said she'd spotted him. And I went running, and there he was on the side of somebody's house, and he was just, totally fine and clearly being fed, and probably walked into their house and, had
Yeah.
no problem living with them. But ever since then, he always wanted to go out all the time. And so my kids were super afraid that he was
Yeah.
going to take off again. So then we really couldn't let him outside. And
Mm.
so I started putting him on a leash, and I didn't think he would take to it, but he was so desperate to go out that he would.
Yeah.
So he would go on a leash and we would go on walks around the neighborhood. And he mostly just wanted to go in the neighbor's yard and eat their grass like he always did. That was
Oh,
their big
that
thing.
was his favorite thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but so and we had like a backpack that we got through Instagram, that he would like travel in the car with us, but he wasn't like a super adventure cat. We didn't do hikes. A lot of other people do amazing things with that kind
Mm.
of thing, but he mostly just wanted to go in the neighbor's yard and eat their grass. And we had like an outdoor catio, so he would sometimes go into that.
Oh,
He would
lovely.
always go, he loved to go into that too.
Yeah, he got his fresh air.
Yes, yes, yes. I think he mostly had some friends that he made or some other cats he wanted to beat up. He was kind of a bully. Like,
Was
he
he?
wanted to terrorize all the other cats. And they would come to the window and kind of be like, Taha, we're outside.
I
And
tried to
he would,
coax him.
yeah, and he would be beside himself trying to get out there to them.
Well,
So,
thankfully he was close by when he did escape, and that was amazing that he was close by and
yes.
he got him back. So you kept
Yeah,
him safe and he was on his leash. Did he kind of take to the leash okay,
he
or was
did.
he? Yeah, yeah.
He did. It's funny because we had tried it years before, and that's the thing that they say about cats is you put a leash
Yeah.
on, they just flop over like they're boneless, and you have to drag them around, right? And he did that, but then when it was really like, okay, it's this or nothing,
Mm.
he immediately started, okay, I'm ready. I'll put on. He would even come to me and look at the leash and kind of paw at the place where the leash was, and then
Oh,
paw at the
really?
door.
Wow.
And if I got out the leash, he'd be like, he'd come running, and he definitely loved
Wow.
that experience.
Super intelligent, I would say.
Well, I don't know,
Yeah.
goofball, but
Yeah.
but something about that really, really, connected with him. But yeah,
Yeah.
we always say that that was our like miracle moment with him
Mm.
that we got him back, because then a few years later he got eye cancer, and if he had
Mm.
been on the streets when that happened, it would have spread, and then he would have had a
God,
terrible death
yeah.
on the streets. So it was really lucky that we got him back.
God, and so he had eye cancer, and that was obviously, was that a big shock? Did you kind of see that he was unwell? Tell us a bit about that, if you feel comfortable talking about it, of
Sure,
course.
sure, of course. Yeah, no, that we've talked about that a lot. So, right, like I guess I didn't notice it, right? It's like you don't see things that are right in front of you. Plus, I don't know, my
Mm.
kids are just more in tuned, and so they had been noticing the spots in his eyes.
Mm.
Like there was one spot in his eye, like a brown spot that they noticed. It was, and my son came home from college. It was 2021 because it was like during the pandemic, the kids were starting
Hmm.
to see it, but then my son came back and he had been away for college. And so when he came back, he was like, oh no, this is definitely growing. And he
Okay.
Googled it and he's like, we got to take him to the vet because it could be eye cancer. And so we did. And unfortunately, with eye cancer, there's no way to know if it's cancer unless you remove the eye and get it tested. So it's
Oh,
like,
really?
so it's
Oh
like,
God.
oh, okay, well, I don't, that sounds terrible. Like, I don't want you to, what if it's
Yeah.
not cancer? What if, because there's a different kind of thing that can happen. And they
Hmm.
can tell, they have certain ways they can tell. They look at if it's in the pupil and stuff, then they sort of go, well, it's probably cancer. And so some cats with spots are okay, but
Hmm.
they suspected it was cancer. And fortunately for us, it was cancer and that it hadn't spread. So that was the best of news. But that enucleation surgery is really, scary. And
Mm.
so we thought it was a big deal, but it turned out that it's pretty common. And cats just really, really adapt to it very well. They don't they don't even notice that their vision is affected.
Okay.
And so we just, we really thought, well, gosh, like, is this a good thing to do? How do you, he doesn't know what's happening to him. It's so sad to bring him in and he has this, he
Yeah.
has to have his eye removed. He has no idea why. Um, and how will he recover? Will it, it's going to be painful and all that kind of stuff. He'll be drugged
Hmm.
up and what is that experience going to be like for him? But we thought if we could have, 5 more happy years with him, he was 10 years old at that point. So we
Hmm.
thought if we could have 5 more happy years with him, then that would be worth it. And it really was very easy. So my son had to go back to school after that. And he said, I want you to send me pictures. I want you to send me updates. And I want you
Yeah.
to like keep me posted on how, Ollie's doing. And I said, I'll do you one better. I'll create an Instagram account and then you can follow that. And then that'll be, that. So it really just started out as just a way for him to follow along with the surgery and the recovery. And but it was so
Hmm.
smooth that really I just it became a life in and of itself, a different experience for us than we originally.
Totally different. It just evolved.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose it leads me on to the hashtag One-Eyed Wednesday. Could you explain to everybody listening what that is? Because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, so we just discovered that he was not the only one-eyed cat, right? There were a lot of other one-eyed cats, cats with no eyes, cats with other, vision issues or other
Mm.
disabilities, 3 legs, 2 legs even, um, and so this One-Eyed Wednesday hashtag was just a way back in the day when hashtags were a thing on Instagram, which they don't seem to be anymore,
Yeah.
where people would share a picture of their pet to just be like, hey, my cat has one eye. I think there are other types of it's not just cats, it's also dogs for
Hmm.
sure. But and other animals as well. But um, I just got really interested in the idea of promoting these kids. I wouldn't have thought before I had a cat with one eye, I
Mm.
would have probably thought, oh, I don't want to adopt that kind of a cat from the shelter. I'll get a cat with, that has no medical issues. I don't want to have any kind of problems. I don't
Yeah.
want to, it's hard enough when they have to go, and I don't want extra things to take care
Yeah.
of. But as I started doing this, I realized, they are just like all the other pets. They're not extra work to take care of.
Mm.
Um, and in fact, they really get, ignored at the shelters. And I think people think that like, oh, I wouldn't want to spend that money on medical care for a cat, I would,
Yeah.
it's just not worth it. And I think by promoting that hashtag, I I wanted to just really share with everybody else that like, look, these cats are beautiful, they're wonderful, they're lovable. You should, think of them when you're going to adopt, and they deserve to have the best medical care and that you could afford. And they're really worthy of all of these things. And so
Mm.
being able to share, connect with all the other cats like that, and encouraging people to use that hashtag really felt like we were letting other people know that this is that you could do this too.
Mm.
So, and it definitely made me feel that way, right? I think now, right, if I have another cat, I want to get a cat with some kind of special needs because I want to help, those cats that are kind of not so easily adoptable.
Definitely. And like they are as worthy as any other cat that has no special needs or disability. They are as worthy. And I think it's just wonderful how it kind of opened that door for you because it
Yeah,
happened to you and
yeah,
now it's kind of
right.
shaped how you think about it all. I think it's gorgeous. And obviously it opened a huge door to connecting with others on Instagram that initially when you'd set up the page it was to update your son with pictures and then it kind of
Yeah.
evolved into this wonderful kind of community and everything and kind of making online friends that have similar interests and tell us a bit about that. Has it been an amazing experience?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, as much as, Instagram has been so good for, just in terms of me bonding with him, taking pictures of him.
Yeah.
Pixie wasn't super interested. She just would always kind of like, she didn't want her picture taken in the same way. I don't, that's not a real thing for cats. Like, but it
Hmm.
did really feel like Oliver would, you'd come in and he would turn towards you, like,
Pose.
really pose. Um, and so, but it, just creating little videos and, being silly with it, was made me more bonded with him. And
Mm.
also I met a lot of wonderful people that were doing really amazing, inspiring things for animals in
Mm.
general and for with their pets in terms of like interacting with them. And I just learned so much. Um, and there were definitely times when it was like, oh, this is silly. And this is Instagram has all these things where they change the algorithm or they promote it as
Yeah.
a way for you um, to make money from reels. And then they take that away. And then, they change the format and all my beautiful,
Every 5 minutes.
grid of beautiful pictures is all ruined, right? And so there's a lot of like problems. And of course,
Mhm.
right now, all the politics of Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, I'm super, that all feels really frustrating. But I
Mm.
will say that when your pet dies and you have an Instagram account, it is such a beautiful, loving, supportive community. And I
Mm.
would never, it's worth it just for that to have
Mm.
been connected, because I would never have even guessed. I mean, even being on the other side of it and contributing to, um, giving people supportive messages, but like there's a whole rally of people that come together when a pet dies, and they, you know, take up a collection and see if they can help with medical bills, or donate to that person's favorite charity, or give them some special gift. Um, and even being on the other side of that, I didn't realize how amazing that would feel to be the
Mm.
recipient of that. And everybody's different, and there's, the way that you grieve your pet, may or may not kind of fit into that. You may or may not find that to be supportive, but I definitely did.
Yeah.
And it just the community was just so sweet and so welcoming, um and they collected money to contribute to a fundraiser that we made up, and they sent us these beautiful paintings
Oh, wow.
um,
Yeah.
and of portraits of our cats. And what else there's a lovely friend that I made there who is a teacher, and her students, kind of had this whole project about One-Eyed Wednesday,
Oh,
and
yeah.
creating like different like little fan clubs and writing letters to those, tracking them on the map about where all these different accounts are in the world, and then um, writing letters to those people, to those accounts, to those people. So Oliver had his number one fan, and we got the most sweetest letter from that kid when Oliver died. Um,
Oh, God,
and
that's
that
lovely.
was, yeah, I mean, all those things are just things to treasure, but also it was just a place for me to really express how I feel,
Mm.
because, in the real world, you don't really get to talk about that much. People kind of
Mm.
go, oh, I'm sorry, and that's too bad. And they don't ask you,
Yeah.
you know, oh, tell me, really, you lost a pet, and tell me about that pet, and how,
Yeah.
how was your cat? What was this personality like? No, nobody asks you about that,
No
right? People
way. I
just
don't
kind
think
of
I've
go,
ever been asked that.
right.
You're so right. Yeah.
People just go, oh, that's too bad. I'm really sorry.
Mm.
Anyway, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on Instagram, it's like an alternate universe where all these people just get it. If they'd made the the effort to create an Instagram account for their pet, then they get it, right? And they know
Mm.
how hard it
Yes.
is to grieve that loss, and how
Yeah.
that soul, that animal is a member of your family.
Mm.
And and it is a big loss, right? And it's
Mm.
just, never enough time with that animal, no matter how long or how short they live. It always feels like a huge punch in the gut.
Mm.
So just being able to express myself there and share pictures of him and have people tell me how, like, how affected they were by that, and write poems about it, and, send me all these things, it just made
So much
the
compassion,
world for
so
me.
much care,
So much.
and
Yeah.
just helping you to feel seen and heard while going through such a devastating, painful time. I mean, that's incredible. Just the
Hmm.
power
Hmm.
of the compassion that you speak about is just amazing.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
love to kind of delve into how you became an end of life doula and
Oh.
just tell us, like, where that came from, the history of that, or tell us.
Yeah, sure. So, I have always been somebody who, really, I don't know, I guess, thinks deeply about death.
Mm.
My sister and I, cared for my mother when she was dying of cancer almost 19 years ago, and our whole family was there at her bedside. And when she died, I was really deeply affected by that experience of being
Mhm.
present for my mother's final breaths. So later, when I learned about end-of-life doulas, I didn't know about that then. It was just hospice, which is wonderful, but also
Mhm.
there's a doula that can come just like a midwife, right, who helps with the birth. There's a birth doula who helps with
Hmm.
the birth, and helps with the transition into this life. There's an end-of-life doula who can help with the transition out of this life. And that it's all the non-medical pieces of it. It can be financial planning. It can be, um, uh, around helping people think about their will and their ethical will and all these different components of it. It's about,
Hmm.
talking to them about their options for how they want to be cared for and what they want for their experience. Um, and so I just really wish that we had had one for my mom. And
Hmm.
so when I found myself looking into like a career change, I was just really drawn to that. So I did a training to be an end-of-life doula in February of 2023.
Hmm.
And my experience is that I've had a lot of echoes between family loss and pet loss. And
Hmm.
so right after my mom died, we found out that our first cat Tess had cancer. My mom had cancer, and then our cat had cancer. And so we had to
Okay.
put that cat down. And so that was just like a double blow. And then
Hmm.
a few months after my first cat, but we got Pixie after that, and we had these two wonderful cats for, a decade and a half. And then right after I got my doula training, um, the next month Pixie died, and then my dad died rather suddenly a few months after that. Um,
Hmm.
and my sister and I were there caring for him and at his side for his final breaths as well. And then a couple of weeks later, my sister's dog died, and I just thought, okay, that's it. Like we're done. Like there's no more.
That's a
And
lot
it
of
was just it was
loss.
just
Yeah.
a very heartbreaking to kind of have those
Hmm.
things piggyback on each other. It seems to happen that way, right? For
Hmm.
me. And then a year later, Oliver died, and I guess a year and a half later, but all of it was cancer, and it just makes you feel really haunted. Like, why is this happening to all of these
Yeah.
important people in my life? But I've done so much learning about death and dying and the resources that are available. So in
Hmm.
California, you can get free bereavement services for 13 months after your loved one has passed, whether they were in hospice or not, but the hospice programs are the ones that provide that.
Hmm.
Um, and they will talk to you about all sorts of grief issues, right? They will talk to you about your cat. They will talk to you about your father. They will talk to you about, what else is going on in your family that's making, grieving difficult for anyone else, and,
Hmm.
how that's affecting you. And so I had a wonderful grief counselor, and it definitely helped me so much. And, it inspired me to, I mean, I'm interested in maybe learning more about grief counseling to become a counselor. I'm also
Hmm.
launching a life writing service to help people tell their stories, like terminal patients to tell their stories via letters or photo albums or digital stories, or help families tell their stories of a loved one who passed suddenly. I just had a friend who died very suddenly last week, uh, and so a bunch of us are getting together to collect stories about him and try to, try to make sense and process that loss, right? It helps us, and it also gets to continue his legacy. And I
Yes.
think that's so important to do for the people left behind. And I think
Hmm.
that's true for pets too, right? I think
Yeah.
all of the all of the grief that we experience is because we have all this big love for this person, and it
Hmm.
suddenly doesn't have a place to go.
Yeah.
I can't text my friend and talk to him right now, but I can work on his obituary, and I can help, to design some project that we can put our time into. I can't pet
Hmm.
my cat right now, but I can, post a picture and talk about how I feel about that
Hmm.
experience. And that might help somebody else out there too.
Hmm.
Um, and each grief that we experience, right, they all bring up all the other ones. And so
Yeah.
that all that sort of snowballing of different losses that happened in my life with the
Hmm.
pets and the people, each one of them brings up all the other ones. And sometimes it is overwhelming and it can feel
Hmm.
like you're snowballing. And sometimes it's like, oh, this is life. This is part of life. And this needs to inspire me to make the most of this life, because none of us has forever, right? All
Hmm.
of us have to grapple with the fact that our lives are finite.
Hmm.
And, we don't have enough time with our pets, and we don't have enough time for ourselves, but we
Hmm.
have to make the most of what we've got and try to celebrate each other while we're here.
Yes, definitely. So well said. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree. I think I think how you've described that, like maybe it isn't a coincidence that you've ended up in this new career path because
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and it's an awful lot of losses that you've had to endure and process and come to terms with. And then obviously you say they snowball, they just compound when another one happens. And
Yeah.
like, have you found doing the end of life doula training, did that help you when it came to euthanasia
Oh,
of your
absolutely.
cats? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. With our very first cat, Tess, I was just so overwhelmed from my mom's death that I
Hmm.
just couldn't take it. So my husband pretty much had to deal with that one on his own. Our kids were little. We just, my husband took our cat and did it himself.
Hmm.
With our cat Pixie in 2023, um, it was an emergency situation, and we really had to scramble to get her to the vet, and then to get our kids on the phone, and our daughter's local, so we could pick her up, but our son was far away, and that was his cat that he
Yeah.
loved for his whole childhood and that loved him, so much. And
Mm.
he couldn't fly back to be there in time, so we FaceTimed with him. And the emergency vet was wonderful, and they let us take our time, and they let us feed her a last meal and light candles and decorate her body with flowers and, you
Mm.
know, do a little bit of ritual that I think is really healing. And I had just come off this doula training, so it absolutely helped me to be like, okay, I need ritual. What do I do?
Yeah.
How can I pull together a ritual really quick?
Mm. Yeah.
But the whole experience was super expensive, and it just felt awful that we couldn't bring her home, and she had to be at the vet, which she hated, and all that,
Mhm.
just it was horrible. Um, so a year and a half later, when Ollie got sick, it was a much slower process, and we'd
Mhm.
been monitoring some health problems for him for a while, but over Thanksgiving, our whole family was home, and we got to really see what was going on with him, because it was progressing so fast. At that point, he stopped eating, which, again, food obsessed. When he stopped eating, I was like, I'm always going to know
Yeah.
that it's time when he stops eating. Like, something's
Hmm.
wrong if he's not eating. So we got that he had the cancer diagnosis, and they said that chemo could help him, and that we were waiting for it to arrive, but we were just sitting vigil every day, and I was saying, this is worse than they think it is. Like, this is not right, and I
Yeah.
I said to the vet, what if what if we need to call you and euthanize him over this holiday break? And she's like, no, 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 we're nowhere near that time. And I was like, I don't know if you're right,
Yeah.
And so that holiday break was torture, because everything was closed, and
Mm.
we're calling the emergency vet every day, being like, it's still this bad. What do you think? What do you think? And anyway, and so just watching him just mope around and hide under the bed, and um didn't
Mm.
want to be touched, right? He was just not himself. And it was painful for us all to watch it. But we also were like processing all that out, every day, being like, this
Yeah.
is not the way he wants to live. This is not the way we want him to live, right? We're not going to keep him alive for this, right?
Yeah.
If he could turn it around, like with the eye cancer, he could bounce back, sure, we will do anything. But if we are going to have him be like this, if this is what it is, we don't want this. So my husband was like, let's put up the Christmas tree. That's what we do after Thanksgiving. And my heart was not in it. I was like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. But as soon
Mm.
as it was up, Ollie came and sat under the tree and, looked up at the lights. And that was like his favorite place. And I was so glad
Mm.
that we had that. And so, there were just those moments, right, where he was like coming out and reassuring us and being like,
Mm.
I'm with you. I'm here with you. I'm still your lovable pet, and also I'm not feeling good, you
Yeah.
know. So when the holiday was over, we took him back to the vet. We said, look, this is what's going on, and they said, yeah, that he hasn't responded to these things that we've done. There were some steroids and stuff. He hasn't responded. That means it's not the right kind of cancer to respond to this chemo, and so
Okay.
that means it's not going to work. And this is, they did some other tests, and they saw a bigger mass than they thought. And we just said, right there and then, okay, we need to give him a loving transition out of this world today. I don't want to have another night of worrying about him.
Yeah.
And we called like a dozen mobile vets, and only one was able to come that same day
Okay.
and come to our house. And so, we were able to go and pick Oliver up from the vet, bring him home. Um, and he walked around the backyard like he wanted to do. He went in his catio. I think he ate a tiny bit.
Mm.
He had a really good last day. We had a really good last day watching him kind of go through
Yeah.
um, the motions, but we still knew he was sick. And then he went and hid under the bed. And so we knew he was still sick.
Mm.
And when the vet came to the house, we thought, where should we do it? And my son said, what about outside? And that just felt like a really good solution because he loved to be outside so much. And this is
Mm.
another opportunity for him to be outside. So we sat on our back porch and took turns holding him. And the vet was really nice to let us do a little ritual and light some candles and, play some music and each of us tell a story and read a poem. Um, he couldn't have a last meal, but he had us doing that for him. And that was our ritual. Um, and it just felt so much better. And we were all able
Mm.
to give him what we thought was the best transition
Yeah.
possible. Um, it's just so hard to do
Mm.
because you just worry so much that they don't know what's going on. But the vet really explained, I'm giving him this shot and this is going to make him, feel no more pain. And, but he's still there and, he's just flying high now and that's the way to go. Right. And
Mm.
so we could imagine him, running and, eating all the favorite treats that he liked. And then I'm going to give him this shot and that's going to be the one that helps him to leave the world. Um, and that experience was just so much better for
Mm.
us. Some people
Yeah.
don't want to do that at home because they feel like it's gonna then kind of make them think about it every time they see the place that they did it.
Yeah.
But for me, um, and everybody's individual, but for me, I already feel like I'm thinking about Ollie every time I come to home to my house and walk through the door and he's not sitting
Mm.
there. Every
Yeah.
time I wake up and he's not there to climb on my lap in the morning. I'm already thinking about him in this house. I mean, I would have to
Mm.
move. And even
Yeah.
if I did, I would still think about him, right? It's not as
Yeah.
though that's an option to just
Mm.
erase those thoughts from your memory, and
Yeah.
nor would I want to, right? And
Yeah.
so um, I can look at the spot where we said goodbye to him as a beautiful spot that we
Mm.
we knew that he was not going to be okay, and that is the last best gift you can give
Mm.
to your pet. That there is a time at which we took these pets into our home, we domesticated them. They are our animals. That is our responsibility
Yeah.
when they are in pain to alleviate that for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not out in the wild where they can, you know, choose the death that they want to have,
Mm.
crawling under into a cave or something like that. Um, this is our responsibility. That's how I feel, that this is our responsibility to
Mm.
be, by their side and really um, helping them, letting them feel that we are the ones holding them as they're dying,
Mm.
and that just giving them all that love and letting them know that they were loved and that we will never forget them.
Mm. What a beautiful last day that he had with all of you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like what a gift to him and to all of you, like to yourselves, just
yeah,
to have that ritual and to get everybody involved. And I just think it's amazing. And I suppose like you say, it's individual to each person. Some people may not want to do that at home and some people would, but it's whoever's listening, it's giving you some ideas if you are preparing for end of life with your pet. And I think having different perspectives on the podcast and different ideas will help people to
yes,
maybe feel prepared and feel more at ease about it, even though there's so much pain involved in it. But I suppose it
absolutely.
brings me on to your grief and how you process it and how did you, obviously you got tremendous support from Instagram, your online kind of community of friends, but is there any other ways like that helped you to work through your difficult emotions with it?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Mm.
I wrote a lot in my journal that week as he was sick.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I'm feeling a lot of grief and pain, I really can't do anything but write in my journal. Like when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, I'm like, all right, here I go. This is my sign. I got to pick
You're
up that
speaking
journal
my
and write in that
language.
journal. Um, so, he was like, I remember so clearly that he was hiding under the bed and I just grabbed my journal and sat down on the floor next to the bed, and just wrote him a letter about, all that he meant to me. Um, just telling him everything I wished I could make it better for him, and how I'd always remember him, and how he taught our whole family to love.
Mhm.
That's so they will all my kids will, and I will too, always think of these pets, right, of their childhood pets um, as the foundation for the way they're going to love any pet and any
Mhm.
animal in the future, right? Like that is something that they will always have. So now, and that way they live on in our hearts, right? I just imagine, right, the soul of, you know, it, of that, going up and dissipating, but also entering into our hearts, right? Becoming a part of us, because that's
Mhm.
really what we are, that love that we had is always a part of us.
Yes.
Um, it, and I really believe this is true again with like humans as well as pets, right? That um, there is a relation, you continue that relationship with the person after
Mhm.
they're gone.
Mhm.
You can, in the way that I interact with, other animals that I meet when I walking around my neighborhood. I'm think that's influenced by the love that I had for these pets, right?
Mhm.
And the way that I think about my mom when I am, doing something kind for a neighbor or something like that,
Yeah.
that I think about how she was that way. When I'm cooking certain recipes for my grandma, or those are relationships that you can continue to have with that person, even though they're not in this world anymore.
Mhm.
Um, so journaling and writing letters to that person can be a really powerful experience,
Mhm.
that you can continue to have, right? I mean, a lot of times with pets, there's a lot of guilt,
Yeah.
about why didn't I see this? What could I have done differently? Or even if you know that there's
Mhm.
nothing you could have done differently, they still didn't understand it. And so you feel just torn up about it. So writing a letter to that pet, can be so powerful and healing. And for me, um, that is my first go-to. So
Mhm.
when my friend died last week, that was, I wrote a letter thanking him for our friendship, and um, all the things I wished that we had been able to do, and that he had been able to do. And it's never too late to do that, right? You can
Mhm.
do that years after you've lost a pet, and it can be a really meaningful thing. So
Mhm.
um, and every member of my family kind of did that differently. My husband always collect a little piece of fur from each pet before they died during the
Mhm.
euthanasia process. And so he keeps those little pockets of fur, and we have a little picture urns with their ashes, and he puts the fur in the little box next to the ashes. And my son use these flying wish papers that you write a little message, and then you light it, and it kind of floats up into the sky like a little paper
Oh,
lantern,
great. That's
and you can
lovely.
write a little message on it about what you want for that pet or for that person.
Mhm.
um, and my daughter wanted to just go to a cat cafe and hold cats. Like that was her
Oh,
big thing, was, as soon as she can, she wanted that experience. So each of
yeah.
us had a different way of processing that. And then, and as I mentioned, I had Instagram where I could go and be like, hey, I need to let everybody know that this happened. And then, have the messages and
Mhm.
the outpouring of love and support from that community has just meant the world to me.
Unbelievable. Yeah, there's so many lovely ways that you describe there, and I particularly love the letters. And do you feel that obviously they're therapeutic, but do you feel when you're physically writing the letter and maybe afterwards, do you feel a release of emotion, or what are your feelings when you're actually doing that process? Like, mm,
Yeah, for me, I mean, my handwriting is terrible. So if I'm gonna ever read it again, I need to type it. But I don't worry about reading it again with my
yeah.
journals. If I ever try to, it's pretty bad. But
Mhm.
um, but I just find that putting the pen on the paper makes a huge, like it makes things come up in your head that you think about in a different way. It's a
Yeah.
totally different processing. And
Hmm.
so I'll start something and I'll think I'm going to write this and it'll go off in a totally different direction. And
Mm.
so that those kind of realizations, are very therapeutic, right? Sometimes that's the same thing I've discovered anyway through like therapy and grief counseling. You're talking to somebody and you're saying it out loud. You can't, these ideas bat around in your head and you can't kind of make sense of them. But when you say them out loud or when you write them down, it makes a
Big
it
difference. Yeah.
transforms them in a
Mm.
different way.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely felt like that was meaningful. And sometimes you can even just feel like, you're saying like, I feel so guilty or I feel so, I wish I had done this for you. And you can just kind of feel like you're that other entity saying, it's okay. I understand.
Yeah.
And, you had so, I know you loved me. You had so much love for me. Like,
Mm.
you can just feel that reassurance. I can. And I know it's my own brain processing that
Mm.
response for me. And thank you for processing that
Yeah.
response for me, brain. I
Thank you,
appreciate
brain.
that. Thank you, brain.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
helpful though. Yeah, and that's amazing. And of course, and that's the thing, like journaling can kind of be in so many different ways. Obviously, for me and you, we physically like to write down our thoughts, but for other people, they might be able to leave voice notes for themselves in their
Oh,
phone
yeah.
somewhere, or they might use the
Yeah.
computer and type them up, or they might, there's so many different ways to do it. So if anybody's listening that is like, oh, I really have wanted to journal, but I'm not really the writing, I don't like it, but there's totally other ways to do it. You can have an online blog, whatever you want to do. There's so many ways,
Yeah.
or even just an Instagram page dedicated to your pet. I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
And
I'd
that's a
love,
journal. That's a
yeah.
journal too, right? The
Yeah, it is a
Instagram can be a
journal.
journal too, because you can just write
Yeah,
out all these things that you're feeling and post them. And
yeah.
I see some beautiful ones. And your Instagram account also
No,
has
thank you.
beautiful musings that, reflections that help people
Mm.
with loss for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a question I'd love to ask you, and I know now it might be putting you on the spot, but because there's so many memories, but your favorite memory or one or two of your favorite memories of Ollie,
Oh,
share them with us.
let's see. Well, we always tell the story of my daughter was eating a piece of pizza on the couch and
Mm.
Oliver ran by, grabbed the cheese off the pizza in his mouth and ran off with it. And she was left holding a piece of pizza with,
Nothing, no toppings.
with just sauce on it. And, in shock, stuff like that. Most of them are food related, I will say. He
Food
was
obsessed, yeah.
yes, um, he was always making us laugh with the way that he would react to food and try to steal stuff from us. So yeah, there are a
Mm.
number of funny stories like that.
That is so cute. I'd say he was quick on his feet. He was just gone.
Yeah, he was.
And would you say, like, experiencing grief and loss, particularly pet loss, would you say that you've learned anything from those relationships? Are there any kind of takeaways or kind of valuable lessons that owning a pet or like that Ollie has kind of brought to your life or the impact he had?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. I've always loved this quote from Leslie Marmon Silko. One day I'm going to have it tattooed on my arm. No one is ever truly lost or gone once they have been in our lives and loved us as we have loved them.
Oh, that is
Because
beautiful.
the people and the pets and the souls, right, that we love change us and we change them and they become part of us. And then when they're gone, they live on through us in the way that we interact with everyone else that we love moving forward.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's my biggest lesson from all of the losses is, just that you can feel that with your pets and your friends and your loved ones while they're
Mm.
here on this earth, right? You can go, wow, this person means so much to me and they are part of my heart now.
Hmm.
And and it is tragic when they are not on this earth anymore for you to be able to interact with them when you can still talk to them. They can't talk back,
Yeah.
but 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 they are part of you and they will always be part of you and that's an important um
Mm.
important to remind yourself sometimes, right? Because
Mm.
it is so hard to experience those losses. But, you know, um, and I'll just say one more thing is that, I've said this already, that we just never have enough time with our pets
Mhm.
or with anyone in our lives, but our pets aren't with us for that long, right? And so I had always hoped that Ollie would live to be, certainly 15, but I would have
Yeah.
loved to have him live to 20. And
Mm.
it's tragic that he was only 13, but it also means that he was healthy and happy right up until he wasn't. And so he didn't suffer that long, right?
Okay.
He had
Yeah.
an illness that was tragic and took him out. But it was a relatively short period of time that we had to witness him being sick, right? And
Hmm.
so um, when you have a pet that has the beauty of having a pet live for a long time is that you have them for a long time. But
Yeah.
the hard part is that sometimes you're watching them decline, 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 and that can be really hard too.
Mm.
And so that's a lesson I've come to accept about my experience with my parents as well, is that, I wish that they could have been in this world longer, but I also, um, I know that they had important and good lives um,
Mm.
in the time that they had, and that when they got sick, I didn't want them to suffer. I wanted them to be able um, to move out of that experience
Yeah.
and move out of this world and not have to be sick.
Mm.
So I don't know. Those are the trade-offs, right, of not having as much time, is that
Mm.
you don't have as much time to be declining and sick either. So
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And it's beautiful the way you put it as well and explained it to us. And I think it'll help people to maybe feel that comfort within it because it can be so hard sometimes for some people to know when is the right time. And
Hmm.
it's that guilt, it's that toss up of I don't want to extend the suffering, but I also want extra time with my pet. And there's just that conflicted sense of what do I do? And I think the way you put it is just lovely, really. It's just to help people to listen to their intuition and it'll guide them and let them know the right time and just discuss it. And that's where end of life doulas come in. That is just, I'll just go back to that point that if you're really struggling, that's something, it's a service, that's a person that can help you, that are trained to help you to make those decisions, to help you, to guide you with those decisions. And yeah, I think that's super important as well.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah,
think? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there are some wonderful pet doula people out there that can help with specifically with pets, like
Mhm.
you. That I have not done that training
Mhm.
for pets specifically, but it's so important and so
Everything
helpful
is
because
is interwoven
because
anyway. Yeah, it's very similar. Like,
but yeah, it's very similar, but
mm,
it's a very different kind of question for your pet because you are solely responsible for that
yes, yeah.
decision, right?
Hmm.
And so and it I've talked to many people who have been going through um, the aging process or the end of life process with their pet and just really not sure, like, what do I do, right? And they say better um, a week too soon than a day too long, right? It's better to help your pet transition
Hmm.
sooner rather than later if they're suffering.
Hmm.
But for the case of them suffering, but how do you determine what that is? How do
Hmm.
you know that timeline? What
Hmm.
are the signs, right? And the signs are very different. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, when I was going through that, I was watching videos and researching and trying to figure out what, people say, your cat will let you know. They'll look at you in a certain way. No, that was not my experience. They don't look at you. They
That's a
look at
very
you whatever way
broad
they
thing to
always look
say.
at you, right? And you can read into it whatever you read into
Yeah.
it, right?
Mm.
So I don't know that you can wait for those kinds of signs. You have to look at all the other factors,
Hmm.
but it's a lot. It's a big, heavy experience for people to go through. So it's wonderful that you and others are doing that work with people.
Hmm. I would love for us, just before we finish, for you to share any thoughts or maybe to share what you would say to Ollie right now if he was in
Mm.
spirit listening to us here now today.
I guess, the thing that comes up for me is just gratitude. Just thank you. Thank you
Mm,
so much for being in our lives. That, uh, it is, um, it's just something that he is the pet that I'm going to compare all other pets to for the rest of my pet having experience.
mm,
Um, and he just really um, was so special. And, all pets that we have are special to us. But,
yeah.
when you have that really special bond with one that it's just not something that you can recreate so easily. So
Mm,
I've been a little bit hesitant to get back into that. I'm hoping to kind of tiptoe my way in with fostering maybe first, and
mhm,
my daughter really needs to have a dog in her life, so that might be the next way that we go instead of a cat. But
mm,
um, I, I will always remember him as this such a special, best buddy for me, and I just thank him so much for that. And um, yeah.
yeah. I hope you're listening, Ollie. Thank you. Um, Whitney, where can people find you on Instagram if they'd like to connect? Just let the listeners know.
Yeah, so I'm always going to keep the Oliver's page up, the
Yeah.
Pirate Ollie Cat page, as long as I guess it's there, just as a memorial to him. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not posting on him much these days, but it's so lovely that other people are keeping up that One-Eyed Wednesday hashtag mission in his honor, and it warms my heart to
Mm-hmm.
see that every time. So I go on there occasionally to see what people are saying, and sometimes to post some things about grief.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have yet to kind of establish my own, doula set up yet, so I'm not quite findable on that uh, uh, for that um, for that endeavor yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
All
maybe
in good
soon.
time. Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
yes.
I will tag Whitney's page in the show notes of this podcast as well, so you can have a look at gorgeous Ollie, because I certainly do.
Thank you so much.
Whitney, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and open and for just coming onto this podcast and sharing your unique experience, because I'm sure it will resonate with so many listening, so many takeaways, and it'll just be comforting for others to hear different experiences. And thank you for being so open and accepting the invite to come on. I've just absolutely loved this conversation so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. It's a lovely format.
Oh, thank you. So, if anybody liked this episode, please feel free to, leave a review or leave a rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening. It greatly is appreciated and helps to get this podcast out to the people who actually need it. So I would be very grateful. And until next time, take care.